Now, this is before Doctor Who week, obviously, and I wanted to do something kind of special to get you guys ready for it. Now, like I said before, I'm doing Big Finish, like I did the second week of Doctor Who reviews. But I wanted to kind of do something special, and I figured this was kind of a tease because it fits the theme of what these certain releases are supposed to be. Now, every once in a while, Big Finish will do something interesting. They don't just simply stick with a 4-episode serial format. Yes, that's the somewhat standard average format of a Doctor Who serial and a TV show, but Big Finish has in the past experimented with this idea in this format. And they've done it in a couple ways. One way is they've done the main story on a disc would be a 3-parter, and then with the room left, they would make a 1-part story. And another little cool thing they did with the format was, so they already implemented that they've done 1-part stories. An idea that's not unknown to the classic series. They're technically the 5 Doctors is one whole episode. It was originally aired as one episode, but there was an episode called Mission to the Unknown, which was the only 1-part story done in the standard length that the show's done, and the purpose of Mission Unknown was it was somewhat of a prologue to a big story called the Daleks' Master Plan. Big Finish kind of followed suit with those, using the stories mentioned before, and also Big Finish embraced this idea of doing anthology releases. 4 1-part stories that either have a connecting theme or an overall kind of story to them. And going back to the 1-part stories that act kind of like small prologues in ways to bigger stories, to kind of get people interested in seeing something, they'll put out one of these stories out, the specific one that kind of has either a hinging element to them that's going to be seen in an arc of stories, because at the time of this recording, Big Finish for a while has been embracing the idea of doing 3 story long arcs, kind of like the Dark Guardian trilogy or the East-Space trilogy. 4 separate serials that add to a big arc in the end. I've listened to one of them myself. It goes by the Klein trilogy. We're not going to do that because I'm already doing a big arc. But to kind of spark interest, Big Finish has put these 1-part kind of prologue stories on their own for $1, and I can't resist buying just $1 for 25-minute episode of one of my favorite shows in audio form. Damn right. Now the point of this is we're going to review 3 audio dramas today, and I'll go through them by order of Doctor and explain where they come from. Review them as a whole, because 2 of them basically don't have a giant influence on the main release they came with. One kind of does, but I'll get to that when I get to it, and that'll be the last one we talk about. Well, no, it'll be the middle one. Sorry, I'm still kind of scatterbrained. So let's get on with this. The first one up is Mission of the Viyrans. Now, the simple kind of gist of this is Perry wakes up in a strange kind of quarantined area where these strange kind of aliens called the Viyrans, you find out that they're trying to make her remember something that happened to her last night, a strange kind of virus, and through the 25 minutes, you get to see her kind of relive the horror from, try and figure it out. And it's somewhat of a mini mystery of what the weird kind of infection was, what caused it, and basically explaining what the Viyrans were so they could set up an arc of stories with the Sixth Doctor and a companion named Charlie Pollard, who is actually more of an Eighth Doctor companion, but she has somehow gotten with the Sixth Doctor. I don't know the background around it. Now, the story as a whole is basically a Dr. Light story. It is a Peter Davison story technically, but Peter Davison appears all of maybe, out of 25 minutes, 3 of those minutes, because he's a part of the infected party that kind of leads to the Viyrans investigating what's going on and trying to... Basically, the virus comes in, and the purpose of them is to find it and then wipe everyone's memory and basically leave all traces behind, because the stuff that... if the stuff that they're trying to find and neutralize gets found out, it's bad. And the serial itself is very much simply Nicola Bryant Perry trying to basically do her best to not, crack under pressure over what's going on. She's in a very odd situation. She can't remember what happened to her. She doesn't understand what these aliens are trying to do. And that's kind of it. It's part of it's the mystery, and then it's kind of a horror story in ways, because this strange virus is infecting people. And to be fair, it's a really creepy way. It basically has a strange effect to where it's changing people physically, so they start looking like Perry, and that's creepy, admittedly. Other than that, it's not incredibly complicated. It's simply aliens have Perry ask her what's going on, and see a flashback to the situation and to see kind of how creepy it is. It's interesting. For a big line you're going to see is for a dollar. For a dollar, I guess it's kind of worth giving it a shot. It's very much a mileage will vary. I don't know how much the kind of weird secondhand info thing goes. The prosecution. The Viyrans are a very interesting race. I'm very interested in checking out how they play out in the future audio dramas they appear in after this. But other than that, it's a very basic story, but I don't feel like I wasted $1. So yeah, let's move to the next one. And the next one is Mary's Story from the Company of Friends. And that's another thing I forgot to mention. Mission of the Viyrans came from a main story called The Mind's Eye, which was a 3-parter, and was Mission of the Viyrans was the 1-parter that came with it. This comes from a pure anthology this time. From what I could understand, Company of Friends was just basically explaining how companions meet the Doctor. At least that's what I'm led to believe. I don't know. I haven't listened to the full one, of course. I've only listened to this. I know Bernice Summerfield is a big deal in Big Finish and in the extended universe of Doctor Who. She has a story, and then it's 2 others I don't know entirely. But still very interesting characters, I'm sure. This one concerns Mary Shelley. Yeah. woman who wrote Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. Um, the reason is basically about a couple years after this, recently in 2011, they released 3 adventures where Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor, who's the Doctor featured in this one, in a very interesting way too, shows adventures with him because basically somewhere close to his first appearance in Big Finish, they joked that he went on adventures with Mary Shelley, and this is them finally delivering on the joke. It opens strangely. It opens with Mary Shelley, her husband, and a bunch of her friends, whose names I'm blanking on. They're all there telling ghost stories, and all of a sudden this strange creature shows up, and it turns out that the strange creature is the Eighth Doctor. Something strange happened to him. What, they never explain. He eventually dies, and due to some questionably insane actions from Mary Shelley's husband, they basically kind of unintentionally recreate the Frankenstein's experiment before Frankenstein's was written. Weird, but go with it. And he's this Frankenstein's monster just running around and going insane. And then Paul McGann shows up, like a past version of the Eighth Doctor shows up, and comes in and fixes things in a weird way. I don't want to explain it because I don't want to spoil everything. And then goes off with Shelley in the end to do the adventures I mentioned. The interesting thing is this thing is okay. The Doctor, we'll call the Frankenstein one the Future Doctor. This is him clearly after the end of his the fourth season of his separate audio series. In fact, Company of Friends was kind of notable because it was the first time that the Eighth Doctor was in the monthly range since '06 or something like that. Basically, after basically he moved over to his own line because he's over there. There's no real reason to have him do more stories over in the monthly range. It kind of stopped confusion. And his series is kind of ended, though there's a box set coming out, and this was his first release back in the regular range. So it spun off of that stuff, and it told you about what happened to Charlie and a companion named Lucy, and it's fascinating to see what happened, if that story will ever be told. I hope that story's told. But it's also interesting because at one point you do see the Future Doctor and a past Doctor interact, and it's interesting, but it's insane. But they do establish that it's kind of it is a predetermined thing. It's not him screwing up his own time stream. This is, for lack of better term, supposed to happen, at least from the Future Doctor's point of view. It's very it's slightly wibbly wobbly if you're into weird time travel stuff, but it's very kind of straightforward. It's creepy at the beginning. You're very curious how the Eighth Doctor got this way, but they never tell you. The atmosphere around it, because up front they just see this weird guy who looks like a monster, and they don't know what to do with him, and they are very creeped out. It's much like a horror story. Again, just like with Mission, but again, it's a famous horror writer in a horror story. And the actress who plays Mary Shelley herself has very good chemistry with Paul McGann. They picked a very good actress to play the character because, again, with those jokes, they kind of need to justify doing this by getting an actress that works with them. because at least from what I can tell from what I've known about the whole Mary Shelley inside joke, he speaks of high praise, so you kind of want to care. You want to make sure it happens that way. And I love the fact that when the past Doctor meets her, he's very kind of. Imagine the Ninth Doctor's reaction meeting Charles Dickens in Unquiet Dead. He kind of acts starstruck like that around all these people, because they are other. Some of these are other famous writers. I can't remember their names at the moment. I'm sorry, but some of them are writers. Again, I didn't feel like I wasted a buck, but it's very much a prologue that's building to something else. That's the thing. This and Mission are very much not really strong stories, but as little build-ups to bigger stories. I think they work perfectly well, and I think it's fairly good. And now our final one we're going to talk about. This was one of the very first audio dramas I ever got, let alone one of the first kind of one-parters. The Word Lord. This was a part of another anthology called 45, and the main difference with those other ones is this one wasn't kind of written to eventually spin off into another series. This one was written as the end cap to it. From what I understand, the number 45 plays a big part in the story called 45, to where they're interlinked, and this is kind of the climax to it, and kind of exploiting what the 45 means. And this one's very spoiler heavy for it. I have to say it blew my mind away. I mean, it's an insanely good story. It's a one-part story that, though possibly might feel a bit rushed, I think works well. I don't know how well it would have worked if they maybe decided to somehow make it one 4-parter. I think 2-parter is a safe bet. After that, they might be pushing it. But okay, now let me get to the setting. The setting, and I'm guessing I'm taking a wild stab in the dark and saying the previous part of the anthology leads them into this, because they're just in a military bunker, a very secure place that they're not supposed to know about, being interrogated. And as they're being interrogated, the reason why they're kind of the people who run this base are kind of walking on eggshells is because a murder happened, and this place is supposed to be insanely secure. No one can get her out. They basically make the point of, like, no, they know when a spider's around weaving a web. They know and keep track of everything, so there's no way of sneaking in and committing a murder without being caught. Without it even happening, but let alone getting caught. But somehow it happens, and we kind of get some build up. The way 45 works in this is sprinkled throughout very nicely, very well done. You don't see it in hindsight as build up. Second listen throughs definitely show you something big's happening. And it all leads to to this creature, this being called the Word Lord, and his name is, I'm not making this up, Nobody No One. Yes, he has a very silly name, but that silly name technically gives him power. The idea of the Word Lords that this thing explains is they're like Time Lords, but they travel through words. And their TARDIS basically the thrust of their engines is a common word or kind of combination of a word. In this case, the number 45. Someone saying like 250 or section 4.5. Basically, different kind of ways to iterate that number 4 and 5 in that way. And it's all hinted through that. And this man is very powerful. Basically using people's words against them in a very insane way. For example, his name's Nobody No One. When someone says nobody can get out of there, he uses his logic and leaves. Basically, it's a very interesting kind of idea, because the Doctor is kind of the embodiment of using your mind and your words before you dare throw a stone. Basically, the guy who uses his words as a weapon has met a man who can literally use words as a weapon. It's a very fascinating kind of comparison between the characters. And the actor playing Nobody is amazing, very energetic, very fun, having hell of a time with the role. But he manages to be kind of funny, but he doesn't lose any terror or any kind of gravitas. He's control of every scene he's in once he appears. The supporting cast is really good. This is Doctor and Ace, along with a second companion called Hex, who's a big part of the 7th Doctor, part of Big Finish. I know that. And at the moment, this is the only thing I've listened to him. It's obvious, from what I understand, he's basically playing this younger brother to Ace, and the 7th Doctor kind of acts more like their father as opposed to Ace's mentor. And he's not entirely like that, but the brother-sister thing kind of plays up when Hex and Ace interact. There's also a character called Claire's the commander of the station, who knows the Doctor. You could tell she manages, kind of in a River Song kind of way, project the fact that she knows the Doctor has trust in him, understands it, and by the end, the Doctor feels bad that she gets shot, because up front she shows up trusting him entirely, and the Doctor feels bad that that trust has been betrayed. And that not betrayed, but manipulated. He but basically, you never want to hurt someone he likes. Like in Silence in the Library. Now, I don't know the story this is a part of, but as a story on its own, this was fantastic. Atmosphere was great. It managed to be very intense, very fun, very something that almost seems, I don't know how well this would translate to visual. I think you could pull it off, but it kind of makes sense that a character who travels through words, it kind of has a little bit more of an effect when the character's in an audio only format, when he's projected in a story that's only audio. But yeah, if I said if you had to choose one, Word Lord's definitely it. For $1, it's more than worth its price. In terms of its effect on later Big Finishes, the villain comes back in a story called Death in the Family, where he shows up in the form of a crowbar and beats up Jason Todd. No, but wouldn't that be great? He does show up. This isn't really much of a setup. It's just establishing a good villain, and they just so happen to use this cool villain again. But that was my one-part trilogies of Big Finishes to get you guys kind of ready for the main Doctor Who Week 3. See you guys later when it happens.